chickens can do this thing where if you hold them up and then move them around, their head will stay in the same place.
They'll just be like,
No, keep your head there and then move. Like a person could come up and
I'll just stand in the same place.
yeah, their head will, but not the regular dog.
Like this. That's right.
Let's see that, bud. Walk like a chicken. Oh yeah, he was doing that before. Like, look at Grammy and Grandpa while you're doing that. It's a little freaky.
Yeah.
We were watching
look at Grammy.
I know.
We were watching an hour-long show on hummingbirds yesterday.
What are you talking about just now?
I watched a boy hummingbird on the bottom, and the girl hummingbird was on top, and she wouldn't let him go until she was ready doing her stuff.
Like when their head go like this, and then
It was
when
on
their
the
head
cement
goes up
sidewalk.
Wow, it doesn't seem very romantic.
their head
No,
goes
there's a
like
lot
this,
of
but then the
friction
bottom-
on that sidewalk.
like
He
this
couldn't
now,
free
spinning, and
himself.
Davis doesn't want to even think about it.
And so I was going to separate them because one time Oreo had a bird, and I got a broom, and I separated, Oreo from the bird. I took it right out of her mouth, and of course the bird was fine. But I said I'll let them wait a little longer.
Well, you want more hummingbirds in the future, don't you?
Well, we usually get one or
That's
two.
why we have more coming back every year.
That's right.
They
We'll
know where
interrupt
the
that.
Taylors live.
If we take care of them, we
I
put
told
a
that
lot
to
of liquid
Barbara
in them.
Russ's in-laws there and they said, "Boy, you know
freaky
a lot
dance.
about hummingbirds." I said, "That's a good
That's so
thing."
weird.
And
You'll have to
chickens.
watch that hummingbird show.
I love
with
you.
Dad and Mom, Davis.
Well, you have to send it to me, or I have to look at it at your house.
Yeah.
All right, bud.
Carrie told us. They're much nicer to be here. Yeah.
They had a lot
because
of trees down
yeah.
over that way.
Yeah, they got beat up pretty bad.
We did too.
That is good. It looks like your face is on a computer, but like there's a background image that is moving more than your head.
No.
Good.
Yeah, so coming home from school, I put my books on the bed and get right to my ham radio, and South Africa and Belgian Congo and French West Africa would be coming through in the afternoon, and then South America, and talking to both sides of the revolution in Cuba, and later on in Hungary, the battle against the Russian communists. Those people who wanted freedom and were battling, they were put down by the communists, but I got some QSL cards from the stations I'd worked, and they were very dramatic. They showed the people wanting freedom, and it would show a very dramatic scene on the card with a note and saying, "Thank you for the nice QSO," which was a conversation, such and such a date and so forth, and I have sent them a card too, just confirming the report. But talking to people all over the world like that from my bedroom after school was very dramatic compared to just coming home and doing my drab homework. So in a way it was a real distraction from my studies, but it was fascinating to me. And of course I learned geography very well. I'd study the map and I'd refer to encyclopedias to find out a little bit more about these countries and their history. Talking to people in Venezuela and how that went. I remember I did a term paper on it, and I used to talk to a kid in Puerto Rico. He wanted to learn English, and I was trying to learn Spanish. And he sent me a lot of stuff on his family, photos and stuff. And so it was a lot of excitement on ham radio set. Now they're watching videos and probably.
Well, they watch YouTube videos of people around the world talking about their stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
Do you still have
right.
any of those old QSR L
I
cards?
got some of them.
It was,
QSL. What does that stand for?
it's in, of course, in early ham radio, everything was on Morse code. So they had phrases that you could send a Q signal, which was just 3 letters. They all began with the letter Q. And they all had a meaning. 3 letters together, beginning with Q, would be a whole phrase. Like some would say, your signal is very weak, can you increase your power? Another would be, your signal is very strong, can you reduce your power? So they just sent 3 letters and it would say a whole phrase. It was
So that's like the equivalent of the emoticons today, like the sideways smiley face.
yeah,
or the,
I suppose that
yeah,
would
the
be,
abbreviations of.
comparable.
Cry.
Yeah.
A lot of the abbreviations they use in texting, you know. So, yeah, it was all very dramatic. And I would talk to a guy in South Africa who was running a business, and I'd say, well, why do you people still have apartheid? You weren't supposed to talk politics. But I did. I was a kid, you know, I was a little outspoken, I guess. And he would try to explain it, and I'd say, well, you know, we don't have that here. I said, sitting next to me at my desk in the schoolroom is a black girl named Alma Wiggins, and we get along fine. You know, that would be verboten down there. They wouldn't be mixed like that.
Yeah.
And so you got a feel for the way things were in different parts
And how poor they
of the
were.
world. And out in the Congo, the missionaries had their field generators and radio stations to talk to the home church back home or other amateur operators, and talk to the capital in the Belgian Congo for what they needed in supplies and what have you. And it would be very interesting to ask them what's going on, and they would say they were Christian missionaries trying to teach Christianity to the natives there and help them with medicine and habits of
Cleanliness.
agriculture and sanitary conditions, and, you know, try to do things to help them and win them over to the Christian way. And then I talked to people up in Libya and those Arab countries and how different they'd be, and then in all the European countries, as I said, Hungary, right while that attempt at a revolution was going on, and it was just wonderful to jump around the globe and talk to people here and there.
So when you said you were 14 when you got your ham license,
Yeah.
how many other kids that young had gotten their
Oh,
license?
not very many. You know, there was nobody
Yeah,
else
some
in my
friends.
high school at all. So I was kind of ahead of the game there as far as that kind of an experience.
So you took your license with some people,
What?
friends. Bill
Yeah,
Page
well, there
and-
were others, like my friend Bill Page and I are still friends. He and I took our test in 1956, in May of 56. And he was 2 years older than I was. He was 16 when he got it. He went to Fitch High School, I went to Waterford. And so in each town there might be 1 or 2 kids maybe that had were getting their license. But not all of them were able to communicate the way I did. You know, they didn't have the interest in getting a good antenna up and paying attention to what you were doing and doing a lot of listening. But I would work every state in the United States within a couple of years and have it confirmed, and 100 countries around the world and all that kind of thing.
Bless you.
Is it too cold for you, son?
No.
No. So
What kind of antenna did you have back when you first started it?
they were all wire antennas, but my first rotary antenna was on the 10-meter band. It was a 16-foot piece of aluminum tubing, 8 feet on each side of center, with a wooden platform in the middle with standoff insulators. And I had a post underneath it with a TV rotor, and I could turn it around 180 degrees, and that would affect the radiation pattern. and I would favor different parts of the world depending on where I turned it. It wasn't a beam antenna or a Yagi, which was multi-element, which would be far superior, but it would help over a single wire. And with that, I was on the 10-meter band, which was really hopping in those days. It was the strongest sunspot cycle we've ever had in modern history, going back for about 200 years. They've been charting the sunspot activity. And with a simple antenna like that, and I was running 35 watts on AM voice modulation, I could speak with people all over the world with 35 watts amplitude modulation with a simple antenna like that, and it was just remarkable. This went on for 1957 and 58, right at the peak of that cycle. And I'd have U.S. Army monitoring stations in Europe and other places tell me, Paul, you're stronger here than the Voice of America down on 9 megahertz. I'd be on 28 megahertz, which was a very favorable band for long distance communication. Said you're 40 decibels over S9, which is extremely strong signal into Europe, Central Europe. And and I was only running 35 watts.
So wait, where was this Army station?
He was a radio operator for the Army, and they would monitor.
Well, where were they? What country?
They were in Germany.
Oh yeah.
But they would listen to what was going on the radio waves around Europe, the Russians and whatnot. But they had time to spend some time on amateur radio. Some of them were amateur radio operators, besides being Army radio operators. And it was always fun to talk to them and find out what they were up to. But all kinds of people. I talked to Russians and right down through Africa and the Middle East, Europe, all the European countries. Some of them would be very difficult. The Italians, most of the Italians didn't speak very good English. But the French, there were French that knew how to speak English quite well. The English, of course, you had no problem with them. And the people in Norway and Sweden, they learned English very well in their school systems. They all were well educated in 2 or 3 foreign languages. And Spain was a little more difficult. You could understand them better than the Italians when they spoke English. But here, I only spoke English, really. I attempted to speak in Spanish a few times, but I couldn't speak in any language. Just simple things.
Right.
I knew how to identify my station. The letters like K1AFI was K1AFAE, and then you would simple phrases you could do in Spanish. But boy, if they ever set off speaking quickly in Spanish, I'd lose them right away.
So when you started talking, how did you have any idea who was going to be listening on the other end?
Well, you'd call CQ, you'd put out a general call, and if you wanted a DX station, you could say for any DX station, that's a distant station, or you could say looking for European stations, or you could say looking for African stations if you had a special interest, or a particular country, but I would generally put out just a general call, CQDX, which meant that I didn't want to talk to American stations, I wanted to talk to overseas stations. And you'd always be surprised. You'd never know who was going to come back. You get a call, and it would be a guy in, let's say it would be Northern Africa, one of the countries, Tunisia or Morocco. And so you talk to the Moroccan station for a bit and see how his English was. And you could ask him any question pretty much you wanted. How's the weather would be permissible, that would be diplomatic. That would be, wouldn't offend anybody. You didn't want to start political arguments, certainly. That wasn't right. That was not good form. But you could say, what do you do for a living? Or how old are you? Things like that. And they'd say, oh, I'm employed as a school teacher, or I'm employed as this, I'm 56 years old, and I tell them, well, I'm 14 and I'm in high school.
Were they surprised by that?
Oh yeah, they were always tickled to talk to a youngster. So,
Tell them about that fella that only had that one record.
oh yeah, I talked to an English chap in Gambia, which is in West Africa, and he was operating a small hydroelectric generating station, and his job was to monitor all of the components that made it up, and the meters and whatnot, and keep it running. But what he did is he would sit there watching all the meters and monitoring systems, but he had a ham radio set. He was a ham radio operator. So he was playing some music, and that was prohibited usually. Ham radio operators were never supposed to try to broadcast like entertainment.
Right.
But he was doing it. So then when he would stand by and give his call sign, so I called him, and he came back to me, and I said, what are you doing there? He said, well, I've got all these records. He says, and I'm awful lonesome here with nothing to do. I figured I might as well play the music. He said, here in Gambia, we have no restrictions on what we do with the ham radio set. So he said, I play them thinking maybe I'm entertaining somebody somewhere. Well, he played this one record over and over again. It was called I'm Available by Margie Rayburn, and it was sent to him by a ham radio operator who worked for WHDH in Boston. He sent him a whole box of 45 RPM records to play, to amuse himself. And he said, this is the only one I really like. He said, the others, they were free giveaways. So I got chatting with him, and he told me how he oversees the operation of this small hydroelectric plant. It was not a small dam, but they made enough electricity for the small town there. And so he was interesting, and it was funny to listen to him play that record over and over.
You know how it goes?
In Gambia,
I'm available, and I'm available,
Well,
there was one song that she only did, right?
yeah,
Margie
he
Rayburn?
played that over and over. So yeah, she was a one-hit wonder. So when we were listening to Stu Breyer, who you have an article on him,
Uh-huh.
he used to have a show, Stump Stu. So he said, you give me what was the deal? If you gave him a one-time wonder, he would identify what her song was, his song. I said, you tell me what the one hit, the big hit was from Margie Rayburn. He couldn't come up with it. He knew his radio pop music very well, but he was stumped by that. And so I said, it's the name of the song is "I'm Available" by Margie Rayburn. So I don't know whether we won something.
Yeah, we've done it before.
Yeah, we would win
Tickets
free
to
tickets
Bowser.
to a show or something. I'll find this song for you.
Jenny, I'm giving you my chair for a while.
Oh, I'm good.
From 1964 to 1969, when I got pregnant, I left because,
Third grade for 5 years?
Did you hear that, Davis? Grammy is a third grade teacher.
and I had room 301 for 5 years. And when I was leaving, I had to bring my stuff downstairs because I was on the third floor. Not third floor, but there's a basement, and but 3 was for third grade and fourth grade. 2 third grade teachers and 2 fourth grade, and I had to climb the stairs every day.
So what'd you think of that
Look
experience?
what's in your chair.
Where was that?
It was
How do
right
I
in your
know?
chair.
For how long?
I don't know. I just saw it over there.
It was just
That's how stupid
Where
you
was
are.
it?
In your chair.
Ice. Maybe she
Okay.
likes some ice. It's not bleeding, is it, Jenny?
No, just nailed my 3 toes this direction.
You have some bony knees there, so I can give you that much.
Well, anyway, Graham was telling us about her teaching experience
So I
as a
was
third grade
very
teacher.
lucky.
What years again?
64 to 69, 5 years. My lowest class number was 27, and I had as many as 32.
Oh, wow.
They were all behaved. They had mothers and fathers. They all came to PTA. I won the banner 2 times for having the most kids come to the PTA for my class.
Nice.
Parents of the kids.
Yes, it was a teacher conference like, and I loved every minute of it. If we had a story about popcorn, I would pop popcorn and bring him cookies, and they were disciplined, and all the teachers were nice. We had a cafeteria. We played outside for gym for a half hour. But then I got pregnant, and I was lucky to teach until June, and then I had our son December 11th, 1969.
Excellent.
And that was Paul Brian Taylor.
So would you teach every subject?
Yes, and sometimes I had to teach art and music when the teacher didn't come. Art wasn't so bad, but I don't have a voice. But we sang some of the same songs. And then gym, well, I could do that outside, but there was a gym teacher too. And we'd play kickball and duck, duck, goose. And
Duck, Duck, Goose. How do you play that?
Oh, we know how to play that.
Davis?
Goose!
You know that, Davis? You do? Duck, Duck, Goose? You gonna tell us how you play it? Is it
go
fun?
around in a circle,
Yeah.
and then the person you say is duck, duck, goose, and he has to go around to get to your place before the other person or whatever.
Oh.
And I
that's the
love
way it
doing
is.
Farmer in the Dell.
Yeah.
I love doing tic-tac-toe, and I like doing hangman when we finished all our work.
Oh,
Nice.
you did that?
Of course I
I
did.
never heard of that.
Yes, because I can do
Dad,
what I
now you
want.
get on.
Hangman, huh? Wow.
Oh, I don't want to overload the chair.
So I really enjoyed every minute
Are
of
you
it.
cold? son?
Good.
And there were only 12 teachers, 2 for each class. A nice principal, Miss McGee, hired me when I was supposed to go back for 8 more weeks of student teaching. She hired me, and I got paid, and then I could graduate, and then I stayed for 5 years.
Now, what about substitute teaching years later?
I did that because I had a little emptiness syndrome.
Yeah.
And so when my son was in college, I did substitute, and I spoiled those kids, but it wasn't the same as your own. And then I would get called like last minute or something, and I was kind of picky, when I went in. But it worked out because you were, occupied, and I wanted to be occupied a little too with kids.
So what was the
So I
class
like-
size during the time you were substitute teaching?
Substitute, I've done as much as kindergarten all the way up to 5th or 6th, and I never liked the bigger grades.
But how many kids were in each class?
Well, those were a lot smaller, than when, I was doing it. I mean, they were never 32.
What was it, like 22?
Oh, sometimes, one time it was 19,
Yeah.
and there were like many boys, and nothing got done because half of them went to the principal when one said he wasn't going to come out of the closet because he took his pants off. And I says, you got to put your pants on and then go down to the closet. And he does that all the time, Mrs. Taylor. I says, well, he's not doing it now because he said, we have to do some schoolwork. We had some clowns
Do
in
you
the
have
class.
some good, your students are good, aren't they, Davis? They behave themselves?
Some of them not so
Oh,
well.
really? Oh, my.
But what I'm saying is you're not doing it anymore. I mean, are you? I'm just going to say,
Oh, go ahead.
I enjoyed subbing, but they're not your own class, so
Yeah.
it's not the same.
Yeah.
And the teachers, didn't really like me to spoil them because they were, kind of mean and stuff. But
Yeah.
I said, why not? As long as I did the work I'm supposed to.
Exactly. No, that
And
makes
then
sense.
we had library where I could just let them go down, and other times, for lunch or a little recess, I didn't have to go out with, you know, 2 of the classes. Sometimes I could go, but it was a smoking room, and you know, if you don't smoke, so then after a few years, they gave the teachers a smoking room, but otherwise we would have to sit where the bathroom is with all the smokers.
Oh,
They
no.
were mostly the men.
Yeah.
But then they said, no, they have to have another room. And now I know there's no smoking in lots of buildings, let alone a school.
Yeah,
Teachers.
exactly. That'd be kind of weird as a student
But
to see
I
a teacher
enjoyed every
smoking.
minute, and I didn't mind, Paul. My husband said I didn't have to work, so I had kids in the yard during the summer and kind of babysit everybody.
Oh, you were
And
great.
You were only child, but you always had children around, and I gave them snacks because we had a picnic table and we played games, and it was very nice.
Yeah, it was.
You enjoyed that too, didn't you,
I
Paul?
loved it.
Yeah.
This will be a good one, you know why?
Why is that?
Big Bob just started to sing WCS baseball. I'm used to playing baseball.
All right.
And you heard me right. As far as Minnesota.
Don't hit any seagulls.
Will I be accused of murder if I kill a seagull?
No, that's not illegal, but not encouraged either.
If you want to go.
Go ahead, demonstrate how it's done. This is the old school typewriter method of eating corn on the cob. Take a breath, bud. We don't want you to choke. Nice. Hi, girls. Hi, Paul.